guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check today's video out. And guys, part of the things that I like to do here on the Advanced Bass Fishing is this is more of a classroom approach to a video. It's like I don't do a lot of showing you guys. I do occasional show you guys baits and that type of stuff, but I really like to talk about the nuances of fishing a little bit and the things that will really help you become a better angler that you don't hear on a lot of other channels out there. And what we're going to talk about today is I want to talk to you guys about how to know what type of retrieve to use on a lure, as far as the action you put on a lure, the speed to retrieve, all that type of stuff, because I'm going to give you guys a good foundational tips on how to retrieve your lures, because a lot of times that makes the difference between getting a bite and not. So we'll get into that in today's video. I'm also, guys, quick reminder, just want to remind everybody, time of filming this video, we're in almost the middle of September. Please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns, guys. We got the fall maps up on the site right now. Great resources to get some good fishing places on your favorite lake or a lake you've never been to. You can download all the info straight to your depth finder, go right to those GPS waypoints and start catching fish. So link in the description there, guys. And also thank you very much, everybody that's taken time to check out my tackle warehouse link in the description of the video. All you guys that have taken the time to bookmark that link anytime you anytime you need to buy fishing tackle, thank you very much, because you're really helping the channel out, and it's much appreciated around here. Okay, speed of retrieve, cadence, all that type of stuff makes all the difference in catching bass, especially on any type of a moving lure and on slow lures both. So I want to give you guys a basic foundational piece of advice on how to retrieve a bait based upon the conditions that you're going to be fishing, because most of the time there's three factors that will determine this. Number one is the water temperature, number two is the water clarity, and number three is the mood and the personality of the bass. And a lot of times it's a correlation of all three of those that you have to hit on in order to generate the strike more than anything else. So how do you know where to begin? It's like, say for example, you're throwing a crankbait. How do you know how fast to reel that crankbait? Do you want to use a straight retrieve, slow retrieve, medium retrieve, stop and go retrieve? How do you know? One way to start out is look at the conditions as far as the water clarity and the water temperature and adjust your technique with that. In general, this is what you're going to have. This is your foundation. The more stain and the cooler the water that you're going to have, the more that a slow, steady retrieve works better. And as the water gets clearer, like in a clear water situation, you're going to need more of a fast stop and go retrieve to trigger more of a reaction strike. And then you have everything in between. Let's say, for example, the dirty water spectrum is 8 inches of visibility, and that's the water visibility minimum. And then you have maybe 8 foot of clarity. Every single foot of gradient, like 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, is going to sometimes require an adjustment in your speed to retrieve. And it's all relative to that. It's like, in general, it's like if you're starting out in cold, dirtier water with a slow, steady retrieve, as that water gets warmer and clearer, that's where you have to gradually speed up that retrieve and incorporate more of a stop and go when we're talking about crankbait fishing. So a lot of that is just relative to the condition you're out there, the species of bass you're fishing for, and the mood and the personality of the bass. Let's say, for example, you're throwing a wiggle work crankbait, and the water temperature is 55 degrees, and you catch a fish, and that fish is hooked on the rear hook. Maybe it's an indication that your retrieve is off a little bit, and instead of throwing like a slow stop and go retrieve, use a medium stop and go retrieve, or use a straight medium retrieve. And sometimes that will get those fish to eat that bait a little bit better. Or if you're not catching any fish, vary your retrieve up a little bit. Ultimately, you have to experiment, and you have to figure out what the bass want in terms of triggering strikes. And a lot of this you find out by accident, guys, because say, for example, some of the ways that I figured out they want a fast retrieve is, how you throw out there and you get the lure, almost back to the boat, and you're reeling in fast to get it in to make another cast. A lot of times I've caught a bass when I started reeling the bait in fast, and that gives me a clue. Sometimes I catch a bass when I first start cranking the lure and the lure hadn't even really gained any speed. So pay attention to what the bass want with that. It's going to be a good indicator. Now, your crankbaits are going to be one lure category, and then you've got other lure categories in those same reaction bait lines, like a spinnerbait, a chatterbait, a swim bait, anything like that. It's the same thing with that, guys. It's the same recipe and the same theory with that in terms of water clarity, water temperature, and the mood and the personality of the bass. Reaction lures, the ones that you reel horizontally through the water column, are going to be a lot more, the bass are going to be a lot more sensitive to the retrieves on that. Now, one difference with that on a reaction bait is a jerkbait, because a jerkbait is a lure that you don't reel in like a crankbait. You don't use a stop and go retrieve on a jerkbait. The cadence of a jerkbait has to do with how hard you jerk the jerkbait, how long you pause it, how much of a downward sweep you put on it, or how much of a little bitty twitch. I've done a ton of jerkbait videos, guys. You can go back in my playlist, and I've got a ton of information on the retrieve on a jerkbait. So that's a little bit different category that you're going to have to tweak with it. But again, it's the same thing. The idea is the same. It's like the cooler, the dirtier the water, you know, the slower the retrieve, and the clearer, the faster. And this may sound like simple, but it's not as simple as what it sounds like, because you may have a big difference in the retrieve if you have 2 foot of water visibility and 60-degree water temperature than if you got 3.5 foot of visibility and 80-degree water temperature. So if it sounds complicated, it is a little bit. And ultimately, the fish are going to tell you. It's like, I can't sit here and tell you exactly what's going to work every time. I can just give you a starting point. Now, with a slow bait, like a jig or a worm or something like that, it has to do with how slow you drag it or how high you hop the bait. That's the difference in, you know, the speed of retrieve with that. You're going to find a lot of times when you're fishing a slow bait like a worm or a jig or something like that, it's not necessarily the speed of retrieve, but it's how much you pop a lure, how fast or how high it comes off the bottom. Sometimes they want it just crawled along the bottom like a little snail, and other times they want it snapped hard off the bottom, and then everything in between. Sometimes they want it hopped off the bottom that far. Sometimes they want it hopped up the bottom 2 feet off the bottom. Again, it's experimentation, and it goes back once again to that water clarity and water temperature. Colder the water, dirtier the water, the more they want it crawled. Clearer the water, the warmer the water, the more they want it hopped. So anyway, guys, hope that explains it to y'all, and thanks for tuning in. We'll check in later.